Do you want to create stunning and professional looking dashboards in Excel? Do you want to learn how to use Excel's powerful features to visualize and analyze your data? Do you want to impress your boss, colleagues, or clients with your amazing Excel skills? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then this video is for you. In this video, you will learn how to create an epic, beautiful, and powerful Excel dashboard that will take your data to the next level. And here is the best part. This entire dashboard is going to be made with a single Excel formula. That's right. If I remove the formula, the dashboard is not there. And the moment I put the formula, the dashboard is there. Let's take a look at this. Let's start with the basics. This particular one formula report approach relies on many of the newer functions available in Excel 365. The biggest ingredient is of course the let function, but as you can scan from this entire gobbledygook of the formula, there is a whole bunch of new formulas in there. So let's take it one step at a time. First, let's understand what our data looks like. The data comes in 3 buckets. We have got the shipment data of awesome chocolates. Each row is one shipment and we know who the person is, what country they ship it to, what is the product, what is the date, amount, units, and a shipment identification number. And then we also have 2 other dimension tables. One is a products table that tells me for each product what is the category and how much is the cost per box. Using this cost per box information along with the revenue or the amount information, I can figure out what our total costs are and profitability is. And on the people side, for each salesperson, we know what team they operate in, what is their profile picture URL, as well as the picture itself. For this picture, I have used the image function to extract the picture from the URL. So now that we know the data, let's take a closer look at our one formula report. As I said, this entire report is generated with this single massive formula. We'll go into the specifics of that formula in a minute, but I first want to demonstrate some of the more powerful aspects of this one formula. This report not only tells the whole story, but it is dynamic. So for example, I can choose to sort this report. Right now it is sorted on revenue by some other column, maybe cost. And I'll see the entire thing updated with the person that has highest cost up in the first row, along with the indicator for cost shown here in my headings. And then I can also change the ordering of the report from high to low to high. Likewise, I can also select how many people I want to see in the report. Right now I'm seeing all the 25 people, but if I want, I can see just the first 15 people or 10 people. You can see that everything is dynamic. As I change, my formula output automatically shrinks, and right now it only prints up to 10 rows with this information. As this is a very big formula, I find it very hard to write that formula using the cell or the formula bar here. So for that reason, I recommend using Excel Labs, which is a free add-in from Microsoft if you ever want to write bigger formulas or use Python in Excel or even the AI features of Excel. So when you click on the AI Excel Labs thing, it's going to automatically show me here because this is what I've set it up, but you will be able to switch between different Labs features. I don't want to explain this formula because this is going to take forever to explain this kind of a very big formula. As you can see here, this formula is 188 lines long with many things going on. Instead, what we will do is we will rebuild this from scratch so that you can understand the concept. Before we get into the one formula dashboard, a word from our sponsors. Well, there is no sponsor. I am the sponsor of this video. This video is part of my Excel School Dashboards program. Apart from this video, there are more than 50 lessons in the Excel School Dashboards program that cover the entire spectrum of Excel for data analysis work. Right from Power Query all the way up to creating dashboards, everything is covered in that program.
So if you are looking for a comprehensive and clearly designed course to help you elevate your data analysis skills, consider enrolling in the Excel School program using the link in the video description. When you go there, you're also going to get a fully unlocked one formula dashboard file as well. I hope to see you in the Excel School program. Thanks.
I'll add a new worksheet, and here we'll kind of construct most of the skeleton of that formula from scratch. I'll select a cell and click on my Excel Labs, and I can type the formula here. I like to keep the Excel Labs thing floating on the screen so that I can type the formulas better. So what we will do is we'll start by saying let and hit enter. And inside this let, we are going to define various steps of the formula to do all the operations. Now, if you go back and look at this, you can see that even though this is a single report, essentially it is broken into multiple columns. We have got the picture of the person, name of the person, the revenue bar chart, units, like that. So let's figure out how to get each of this information from the raw data. Remember, this data is at a row by row level, whereas all I care about is individual salesperson level information. So let's go back here and bring up our Excel Labs. And first up, let's construct the report data variable, which will be, we can start this with the shipments table itself. So report data is right now shipments table. But as you can see in the shipments data, we don't have any cost information. So we do need a way to bring the cost information and add it on top here. So let's go back here, and so we're going to start by saying hstack. Hstack is a new function in Excel that stacks data one next to another in a horizontal fashion. So I can combine 2 or 3 ranges together. So I want to get all of my shipments data. And then for each shipment, I want to find out how much is the cost. So the cost can be found with an XLOOKUP function. XLOOKUP shipments product. So for each product in the shipments table, I want to go and look up in the products table product name and then products table cost per box. At this point, if I close my hstack formula and comma and return just the data variable, and when you hit enter, you'll see that it will give you the main shipments table along with cost per box for each of these items that we shipped. We don't want the cost per box. We want to find out what is the total cost. So let's go back here and update this formula and then say that XLOOKUP should be multiplied with the shipments table number of units. So when you update this, you'll see that each row now has a total amount and the total cost information here. So now that we have calculated that, let's go ahead and add one more to bring up the picture of the employee and put it in the cells. So here in the hstack, we have one XLOOKUP that gets me all the costs and multiplies that with the units. Then one more XLOOKUP shipments salesperson, look them up in the people table salesperson column, and then return the people table pick column. Now you can see that when you hit enter on this, you're going to get for each row. So for example, here is Mallory Weber, their picture looked up from the picture column of the employee table. And whenever the name repeats, you'll get the same picture. Camilla, we have that picture. In my sample data of the pictures, I have got some duplicates, so don't worry about it. But essentially, all the pictures are coming in dynamically. So now that all the data is here, let's go ahead and calculate the totals at salesperson level. So we have created a variable that tells me the data. The next variable is salespeople. We're just going to call this as SP and point it to people table salesperson column. And let's just see what this looks like. If I return SP, I'll see that all the names of the people. So now for each of them, I want to get what is the total sales, what is the total units, what is the total costs, etc. To do that, first let's get some of the columns out of the data itself. So I'm going to define some variables. Revenue is my choose columns of the data variable. So that is the entire big table that we saw earlier. And we want to pick the revenue column. Now, I don't remember exactly which column it is. So I'm just going to start by saying 2 and return the data itself. So we can kind of make a note of what it looks like. So you can see this is how the data looks like. Column 1 is the name, 2 is country, 3 is product, 4 is the date, 5 is my revenue, 6 is units, and 7, 8 is the costs. So we are looking for 5, 6, and 8 columns really. So let's go back here and then let's get the 5th column as my revenue. And then units is choose calls of data. 6th value, cost is 8th column. And then now that all of these are there, we can actually create the profit variable. Profit is revenue minus cost. And profit PCT percentage is profit divided by revenue. And if you want, you can, for example, just kind of scan one of these things. So for example, let's just return profit and you'll see how the profit is for each row. We don't want to see this information at a row level. We want to see this aggregated at salesperson level now. So let's start calculating how these values look like at a salesperson level. So now let's define second set of variables called revenue by SP. You might be tempted to use the new group by or pivot by functions. Unfortunately, we are not able to do such complex reporting with those functions. So that's why I end up writing slightly longer formulas. And what we want to do is for each salesperson, SP, we want to calculate what their total revenue is. This is where the BYROW function is really helpful. It can scan through all the items in a list and apply same logic on all of them. So BYROW of SP. So for each salesperson, what we want to do is apply a lambda function. The lambda is going to take the A is the current salesperson, and then apply that logic on them. So the logic is really a simple function. It just want to sum up all the revenue for that person. So sum the revenue, but we don't want to sum it up for everybody. We want to sum it up only if the person is the current person, that is A. So revenue times, and here we want to multiply this with the shipments table, person column, salesperson column is equal to A. So that's the logic, and this kind of like a Boolean logic, we apply this kind of things in the filter function also. And then let's return revenue by SP to see how that looks like. So this is how much is the revenue for each of the people in our team in the order they appear in the people table. It can be a little bit tricky to debug these things, but you should be able to cross-check this with the pivot table. Now we do need to do the same kind of thing, but calculate cost by SP, units by SP, etc. And we can see that this particular column will be referred multiple times. So I'm going to create a variable for that. I'm going to call this as all SP and put that into there. So this is one of the beautiful things with the let function. It lets you kind of build up these variables and reuse them, and then change this to all SP is equal to A, so that my logic looks a little bit crisp here. And we are going to copy this a few more times and change the wordings. So the second one becomes units by SP, and for each of them internally the logic will change. So units will be units column multiplied with that. And for profit percentage, we can't do this kind of a logic. We'll have to do it at an aggregate level. So this is going to be profit by SP divided by revenue by SP. And then we can kind of cross check whether we are still tracking well. So for this, I'm going to use a hit stack, and then I want to get the SP, all the salespeople, and then see what their revenue looks like, what their cost looks like, what their units looks like. So this is basically kind of like a pivot table that we created, although a little bit too long-winded, but that is the core of the logic that I am using to generate this one cell report. Now comes the fun part. We want to make it more like a report rather than a dump of values. So this is where some of the nicer things I had to think about. So I want to be able to show the picture of the person, then their name, then the revenue, and the revenue I also want to represent with a bar graph. Initially, I thought of using the conditional formatting data bar and just duplicate the number. So I'll show you how that would look first, and then I'll tell you why I went with a different approach. So for example, when I'm hit stacking, I can take one of these values and repeat it. So what that does is it will give you a duplicate. So here I have got two values like this. And while we are there, let's also bring the picture. So we have got SP and p underscore pic as a variable, which is basically people table picture. Let's add that in the front. So we'll get the picture and the values. And as you can see, these pictures are really small. So I wanted to make these rows a little bit big so that we can actually see the people. So maybe 32 pixels or something like that. And then let's just fix these columns. And now these values I want to represent as a bar. So I can select that and then go to home, conditional formatting, data bars, and apply a data bar. As the number is already here, I don't want to see the number there. So I'm going to select this again, manage rules, and just say show the bar only. So now the bars come up. When I initially made it like that, I was not really happy with how thick these bars were. Plus, eventually when the final report came to be, I want to make the first row a little bit bigger so that we can emphasize that person. And you see what happens? This bar becomes even chunkier, and I didn't really like that look. So I wanted to go with something a little bit different to get this kind of a thing. So this is where Excel offers another way to draw bars in the cells. It's called in-cell charting. It's a very old technique and I haven't used it in many years, but I found that for this particular scenario, it works beautifully. Let me first demonstrate that to you in a cell here. So if you go to your cell and then type the pipe symbol, let's just type it 6 times like that. This is how it looks like. If in a different cell I type it a little bit more, that's how it looks like. So if you kind of squint your eyes, they do look like a bar chart, but you do have to squint really hard. So this is where if you go to the font, select these cells and change the font to Play Bill. That's a built-in font in Windows, so you don't have to install it or anything. You'll see that the font reduces the distance between the pipe symbols and lets you create a kind of like a mini version of a bar chart in the cell. So this is the basic technique that I used. Now, if you look at the number itself, 749,492, we can take that number and normalize it so that the maximum value, whatever is the highest number in this column, so for example, right now it is 850,000, that's going to become 100 pipe symbols and everything else is scaled down. You might be thinking, okay, this is all good, but how are you going to draw that many pipe symbols? So this is where the REPT function comes in. We'll say REPT within the double quotes pipe symbol and then specify how many times I want to type. So for example, if I simply say type this 35 times, so we are going to use this approach. Go back to the formula. Again, look at the Excel apps where we can easily type these formulas. And let's generate a bar. So now I'm going to make one more variable. I'm going to call this as revenue bar. And this bar is going to be a number of pipe symbols. We can't directly generate this. So I'm going to first make a variable called revenue max and calculate what is the maximum revenue by SP value is. Revenue by SP is an array. So max will tell you what is that maximum value, which would be 850,000. Then revenue norm, which is a normalized value of the revenue, is revenue by SP divided by revenue by max times 100. So this is how you can normalize a value to 100. And what this will do is for the most highest value, which is 850,000, this number and that number will be same. So that will be basically 100 because 1 divided by 1 is 1. And everybody else is scaled down in relation to that person. Now we can generate the revenue bar, which would be REPT of pipe symbol. And the number of times is revenue norm. So it's going to generate a number of bar values for us. Let's see this here. Instead of revenue by SP, I'm going to return revenue bar, and you will get the bar chart here. I'm going to first delete the conditional formatting rule from that, and then select this column, change this to label. And if you want, you can reduce the font size. And once you make the column width adequate enough, you can see the bars appearing nicely. And these are basically font values, so you can align them, you can change the color. So maybe let's just tone them down a bit, and you'll get a nice little bar chart in the cell that is not too big or chunky, irrespective of how high the row is. So this works beautifully with what we are trying to go for. The next bit of puzzle is, if you look at this again, so all of these things are explained to you now. And then I want to figure out if the profit has met a KPI. The KPI is you should make at least 55% profit. If so, you'll get a tick mark, else you'll get an X mark. So for this, let's calculate the profit indicator. So we will add one more and then say profit indicator. And this is basically if profit percentage by SP is greater than 0.55, then 1, else 0. And then let's add that to our pile of things, profit indicator. So you'll get zeros and ones, and I can select this column, apply a icon rule of that. Let's go ahead and manage this rule, edit it. First up, I don't want to see the number, I just want to see the icon. So I'm going to say show icon only, and then adjust this number rules to say that green tick when the value is greater than or equal to 1, and X mark when it is less than 1, greater than or equal to 0. So it's going to basically print green tick or X mark, and we don't have a third condition. So I'm just going to take that out. And when you apply, you'll get these. The icons might initially look a bit like 8-bit, but once you fix the alignment and reduce the font size to 10 points or something, maybe 11 points, they're going to look nice and crisp. And we can now see who has met the targets and who haven't met the targets. We'll also need to apply some formatting on these things. So I'll apply formatting here. And for these columns, you can apply number formatting directly. So initially I applied a currency formatting like this, but I wasn't really happy because I see that the numbers have too much of a precision, and I wanted to see this in a thousands value, like rounded to thousands. So 749K is what I want to see. So something like this, so that they look a bit nice and easy on the eye. To do this, you have two options. One is you can format them right here. You can select this column, go to format, instead of currency, change to custom, and use the code $## and then an extra comma .0 within double quotes K. So that's going to change the value like that. But I was already doing all of that in the formula, and I set myself a challenge that even that should happen through the formula. So I'm going to do that by calculating a few more variables here. We're going to call that as revenue disp. So that is the revenue value that is going to be finally displayed on the screen. And this is basically, we're going to use the text function, and then the value that we want to use is revenue by SP. Apply the format code directly here. So now wherever I'm using revenue, I can, in the final report, I can just use the revenue disp, and you'll see that that's what it comes up here as directly. The beauty of this is I can then apply the same logic for my cost disp, so that that kind of consistency can be achieved everywhere. Let's do that for units and other things as well. And when you're doing this for units, it becomes no dollar symbol, and for profit percentage, it's just 0%. There you go, a bit tidier representation of the data. Already I was very happy with this report, and I wanted to add a cherry on the top wherein I can pick how to sort this report. So right now it is not sorted at all. We can apply sort order. So this H stack is my final report and I wanted to apply the sorting. Of course, then I went a little bit more and I calculated the 13-week trend as well using this grid here. All of that is still part of this. I'll explain this logic of this in the formula here directly rather than redoing it. But let me just show you how to apply the sort order. For the sorting, I do need some variables. So these are the variables. Which column I want to sort it, low to high or high to low, and how many people I want to show after sorting. So 3 variables, all of them go and sit into my settings worksheet here. These are the 3 variables that you have selected on the screen. Cost is the current sorting option, low to high, and then I want to see the 10 people after sorting. So we can use these in conjunction with some simple lookups to basically figure out which column we are sorting on and all of that. These are trivial calculations. I mean, if you have come this far and you are able to keep up, I assume you know how to do this. So I'm going to show you how to apply that logic into that one formula now. So let's come back here and let's create one more variable called report data and then use the H stack for that. So all my report data is now in the H stack formula, and then now I need to apply the sorting logic. Before we apply, we'll just return the report data. So it's as is. And now we don't want to report the data as it is. We want to first apply a sorting on it. So in order to sort, we need to know what the sort criteria is. So we'll say sort by column and point to the number here. So this is C5 here. That's the address. So I'm gonna, unfortunately, when you're editing this in the Excel apps, you're not able to click on the cell because the moment I click, it changes the formula writing for that cell. So I'll need to make a named range or something, or no, remember the address. So it's the settings worksheet, C5 is the cell. So let's go back here and then write that settings sort order, that is ascending or descending. Descending would be -1, ascending would be 1. Again, that is settings worksheet C6, and then show would be settings C7. So that tells me how many values to show. So now that those variables are part of our big let function, let's apply the sort order. In order to sort, what we will need to do is we'll need to take the report data and then sort it by one of these columns. So sort by column number is this. I'm going to call this as column number, and then we'll calculate the column itself, sort by column. So the column would be based on the number. So the number 1 is sales, number 2 revenue, number 2 is units, etc. So based on that, we'll need to pick one of these variables. So we can use choose function for that. Choose sort by column number, and then if it is the first value, then I want the revenue by SP. We can't use the display values for sorting. It has to be the raw values. If it is 2, then it is units by SP. If it is 3, then it is cost by SP. And if it is 4, it is profit by SP. And then if it is 5, then it is profit percentage by SP. You can see that, it's a very straightforward idea. We can use the sort by function. Sort by function, report data. It needs to be sorted by sort by column. In the order is defined by sort order. So that's the final output that we are going to get. I'm going to save this, and then you'll see that it would have sorted on something. I'm not really sure what it is sorting on. So it's cost low to high. So obviously cost is this. 297 is the lowest cost and 399 is the highest. So you can see this is the sort order. I'm going to change this from cost to revenue and then set it to high to low. So we should get rainbows 850, 808, 807, 789, all the way down to 674. Works beautifully. Now let's implement the number of rows as well. So once you sorted, we can store that into a variable sorted underscore report. And then finally, final output take the sorted report and then show that many rows. So show tells me how many rows to show. So I just want to show, take function just gives me the top n rows where n is defined by that. Something is wrong. Oh, sorry. I think I need to return the final output. So there you go. Now we are seeing just the 10 rows of that final report. If I change this from 10 to 20, you'll see that it will give you all the 20 values. And if I change to all, we only have 25 people. That's why. And it is completely dynamic. I can sort it, I can flip it in any which way and all of that. On top of this beautiful formula, I have added some bells and whistles through conditional formatting. So that icons you have seen that they come through conditional formatting. And for this grid here, I have calculated the previous 13-week values and then applied a color scale on top of it and then fed these 13 values to a sparkline in Excel. You can insert a sparkline from here and then point to this grid here. Whatever those values are, that sparkline will show. So if there is no formula, for example, if I delete that formula, as there is no data, the sparkline is blank. But the moment that formula is there, the sparkline will also show up. You might be thinking, okay, so how do you calculate these guys here? So let me show that to you in the final formula here directly. You'll notice that this formula is slightly different than the one that I explained, but essentially the logic is all same. So here, what I did is I calculated a few more things. So first I calculated all the dates into a variable called dates, then figured out what the start date is. Start date would be whatever is the maximum date minus 13 weeks. So that will take me to the starting date of the report that I want to generate. And then I calculate units by date using a MAKEARRAY function, which has the same number of rows as how many salespeople that we have. So SP count is also a variable that counts how many salespeople are there, and then 13 columns. So essentially it will make a 25 by 13 grid, and the grid uses this lambda function to populate the values. So for MAKEARRAY, it takes row and column numbers as two variables, and internally it's just a giant sum or some product formula here. That grid is always going to show units. So I'm taking units, multiplying that with the current salesperson, which is captured through that logic, and all the dates that happened in the week of the context. So at the end of this units by date, you will get all the values, all the 25 by 13 values. And then eventually we bring that units by date into the report data H stack. And when the entire report is done, I selected the first row and heightened it so that we can see that clearly, and changed the font settings for this row by making it all nice blue color with bold and increased font size. So do you like this one formula report? I know that this is a very unique case and not many people would actually need this. It's kind of like an overkill if you ask me, definitely overkill. But I thought, this shows you an interesting use case of how we can combine various things that exist in Excel using one beautiful formula rather than dozens of different formulas and get the result. Of course, it is a lot of work and not for everybody. But if you are the kind of person who enjoys this, thank you for watching this video up to this point. Feel free to grab the data and give it a go yourself. Let me know how it goes in the comments too.